Alright, so this is my code for the Places app that is being built up in Flutter. So right now I've already had one just pre-built to make sure that the code is actually running properly. So this is what it'll look like when you actually have one image set in. So when you go to add in a place, you basically click the plus button at the top. And that sends you to this page where you put in a title for the place. So let's just say, just title it My Room. Save that as the title. You have a take picture and you have the location of where it's going to be chosen. So you click on take picture. That'll bring you to the camera, which is showing a display look of a house. So you can click that, click the camera. You can either reset and take the picture again, you can cancel out of the photo, or you can just exit the photo as it is. So I'm just going to accept it. And you can choose either get current location or you can select on a map. So I'll do select on a map, and as you can see, it gives you the map area around, so you can choose anywhere here. And so you just click there, that's going to be where it is. You click at the top where it says save. You're able to actually save your image that you chose. You click add place, and you're able to see, once you click on it, you're able to see where you actually chose on the map and see what your actual location is. And when you looked at this one from my office, you can actually see the image behind it as well as just the actual location that's being set. So for the actual code, this is where it's just the main.dart file where I just set the background color. I implemented some of the functions of some of the packages we use, like Riverpod again, as well as Google Fonts. And this is for the theme data, which I use for the background, as well for the Google Fonts, again for the images, to make sure the actual wording makes sense. Here in the main function, which is where I just called for my app, called into the material app, named Great Places, and made the home thing for constant for places.screen, which is what's going to be implemented later on. So here in the place.dart file, I had to import the packages of the UUID, which we used prior, as well as Dart.io, which is what we kind of used before, but this was more of an in-depth look at it. So again, using UUID, which is for the UUID class, I was able to make a constant for it, as well as create two different types of classes for the actual place location, as well as for the place. The place location was for latitude, longitude, and the address, which was basically using for the actual location, so that Google was able to actually tell us what the actual position was of our location. And to actually be able to use this, we had to set each one as a different parameter. Setting latitude and longitude as doubles because it'd be using decimal points to actually show the exact location. And for the address, we had to set it as a string so that it would actually read out the address. Now in the class place, in the place class, this is where for the actual title, the image, and the actual location, this was being used for the string, how to use for a question for the string ID to make sure that it could actually be read. And this is where I actually use the UUID for the version 4. And here I set this ID for a string, set the title for a string. The file image was basically a file that had to be imported into from Google, which is going to be a URL, which I'll get into later. But this is where it actually took in the image as well as the location, which I had to use the class called place location, which basically allowed you to actually see the location of the place that you actually are trying to pick. Now here in the location input.dart file, this is basically where you go to actually input your location. Here I used a couple different new packages like the http.dart file. This is the new package that I had to use, as well as the location package. These were two of the packages that we had to use for this new section. Going through, we have the class, we have the just name the location input. It had to extend a stateful widget, and this is where I actually use create a state to actually return the location input state, which is this class right here, which actually allowed you to actually place a location into the place of location wasn't actually chosen, that would choose into a pick location. And if there was, and if there's nothing chosen for the actual pick location, then the getting location would be equal to false, and nothing would actually show up if you don't actually go through and actually choose a location. So here for the string, if the actual pick location was null, basically for the string to actually get the location, if it was null, then it would just return nothing. Here I set the latitude and longitude to the actual pick location if it was actually chosen. And this is where you actually use the HTTP file to actually scan in this Google API, where you had to basically use lat and longitude, which is what I titled for latitude and longitude. and you basically implement that as well as a key that you're given, which everyone's key is unique to themselves once you actually make an account with Google API. So basically, just implement your key, and that allows you to actually choose a location for Google. Going down, I actually had to use a feature for a safe space to actually call once the actual place was actually made, so it could actually save the address and actually show you the actual results of the formatted address that gets chosen. And here I had to use a set state, which used pick location, longitude, latitude, and address to actually call the location that's chosen and actually output the longitude, latitude, and address that's actually being used, as well as the getting location is set to false right now, with the widget using an on selection for the pick location, using an exclamation point at the end. Here we had the get current location, which was using a boolean, as well as the permission status, which you had to allow the status of the permission to actually get the location services. You had to grant that access because otherwise it wouldn't actually be able to work for the actual Android or any of the phones actually be able to find your location. Going down, we actually had the service enabled, which had to wait for a location to actually be enabled. And if it was not enabled, then we'd still wait and just request for that service. So if it wasn't initially granted, it would just ask for permission for that. Going down here, as it said, you had to ask for permission. So permission granted was awaiting for the actual location to get permission. If it was denied, then it would just request again. And if it was granted, then it would return it. And here's when I set the getting location to true, and using the location data to, again, awaiting just to make sure that you can actually get permission to actually find the location, to get the location of the actual current user, using latitude and longitude to actually find the exact position. And if either latitude or longitude was found to be null, then it would just return nothing. Going down on the select on map for the async, you had the final pick location as well as the navigator to actually push for the latitude and longitude. And if the pick location was equal to null, it just wouldn't return anything. And then this is the save place, which is used to actually save the actual pick location. Down here is the build method for what happens if nothing was actually chosen. It would just print out no location chosen. And if the pick location was null, then it would just preview the image network. This is basically just setting the actual box size to make sure that it actually fit when it would return something with nothing when no location was actually chosen. Going down, this was basically just setting up the boxes for the to actually show to get current location and your actual select of the map. So this was just setting up the boxes to make sure that it fit on the screen once you actually get a location and that it wasn't taking up the entire area. Here in the places.dart file, again, we get to use RiverPod as well as a couple other packages we've already been using before. And so going into here in the build method, we actually had to use user places for the user places provider. And this was list of places. This is basically just like the home screen somewhat page where basically you would just show all the places that you've actually saved, just showing all the place screens, as well as just making some padding to make sure that everything fit using edge insets, using a future for the places future that were going to be added later on whenever they actually get chosen by the user. And this is for snapshot connection state. I had to use a circular progress indicator, which basically just creates either could be null or for an indeterminate progress, as well as using the places for the actual user places that gets chosen. Moving to places list. This was just the list of the places that you could actually choose from. Going in and hitting the build into the actual build method. This was just set for the actual background. Again, for the background image, this using a circle avatar, using the title, the subtitle, and for the actual on tap, this was just for when the place detail screen would actually be into effect using a material page route. Now for the place detail, this is for the place detail screen. Again, you had to use final lat and longitude to actually get the locations. This is again returning the HTTP Google API using the latitude and longitude and the key that you're given. And in the actual build method, this part was for the positioning of the actual places details, making sure it was centered, make sure that it's actually gestured correctly using gesture detector. Location, make sure it was putting out for place location. Going down, we have the container, just using for the box decoration, making sure that the colors matched up. So I use transparent, I use black 54, so you're actually able to see it. And this was more for the child text, just making sure that the location address was actually being able to be visible. and making sure the title was large enough to see. And here in the map.dart, this was for the actual map that would actually get kicked in. This longitude and latitude is just a set point that was used as the original Google headquarters, I believe. If I remember correctly, this was for the final place location, as well as for the location for the is selecting using a Boolean. Here in the actual build method, we had the choosing location as well as actually showing what the location is that you've chosen. Again, you use the Google map using onTap for a widget being selected. If it was null, then it would go to the set state for the pick location to be the position that was chosen. As long as it was actually not null, then it would actually choose that. And for the initial camera position, this was just making sure that the latitude and longitude was equaled correctly. The zoom I set to 16 just so it would get a decent amount of the actual picture inside of it. And using the markers for pick location be equal not equal to null and the widget being selected true, then it would actually go into the marker, which I just named M1, and the position would ever be the pick location that's chosen. And latitude and longitude again is just the location using the widget. Now this is the add place dart file, which is used to actually add in certain places, add in the places, so it could actually save it. Like here, we have the void save place. So basically, if the entered title was empty, or if the selected image or the selected location was null, they would just return nothing. If it wasn't, they would actually read the actual places provider, and it would add in the title, the image, and the location. And this exclamation point basically says that it's never going to be null because, as we already saw, we checked to make sure that it wasn't going to be null in the beginning. Here in the actual build method, you have the title just for the text to actually add the place, as well as actually showing the title is going to be when you actually add it in. And using the image input, you actually have to pick image on selected image equals image. And again, basically just copy that over for the location input, as well as for the onPress using save place, and again, using the const text to actually show the add place. Here in the image input file, going over, we use a stateful widget for this, as well as just creating to use a create state, using the image input state, which extended into the image input, which is actually just the original class up here. This was using for the actual take picture, which you had to use async, using it for an await image picker, so actually you had to wait for you to actually take a picture, using the image source.camera and making this the max width of just 600, that way it should cover everything. This is basically just used to actually specify the source of where the image should be coming from, and if the picked image was null, so if you just didn't take a picture or if you canceled it out, then it would just return nothing. And the set state, whenever the selected image is used from the actual file, from the pick image.path, so basically whenever the image is actually taken. Here in the build method, we have just the take picture, and the selected image is not null, then it would use the gesture detector, use onTap to take picture to actually make sure that it would actually take the actual image and save it. And in the container, it basically just used for the opacity and using for the box decoration, as well as just the actual alignment of the camera and image. Finally, in the user places, this is where I use another package, the path provider, as well as the SQF Lite package. These are the last two packages that I added in, as well as the path package. Going through here, we have the future database for the DB, which is just for databases path. This is where you execute it to actually create a table for the primary key, the text, the image, the latitude, longitude, and the address. So in this class for the user places notifier, this basically just set the notifier to actually let you know when the place was updated. Here for the ID, using the final, making sure that the database, the data, and the places was final. Inside of the map, you had the ID, the title, the image, location, latitude, longitude, and address. And here in the add place function, this was basically to add in and save in the new location that you took before you submitted it in. Again, for the database, you waited to get the database to make sure that something was actually going to be coming through, because if no location was actually selected, or if the whole process was canceled, then this would never just go through because it needs to get some input from the get database. Again, using the final for the user places provider. This is just referring into the user places notifier that was defined at the top right here. And here is the section 13, the check marks to go through all of the different section. And that is everything inside of the Places app.